This is the month, well, according to our program, our calendar, our schedule, this is the month when we do some deep listening. We listen to each other, we listen to our neighbors, and perhaps in our own different ways, we can even listen to people beyond the Americas. Every now and then there are people who are on television, YouTube, you may see them hear them on computers, but we try to listen to people all over the world. What are they saying? What are they concerned about? What is it that they need? What is it they really need? So we do some deep listening in October, and according to our program, our schedule, our calendar, I believe that November is the time for trying to get it together. Reconciliation. What's the theme for November? Do we have it? Okay. It'll come up. It is the harvest season for many people in November, but here in Florida, we say planting and the harvest, well, they happen in every season. We'll talk about the autumn harvest today. What it means, especially in this congregation, in this hour. What is it that we're harvesting? And what are the seeds that we want to sow for the future? Now, it's a time of great division, conflict, confusion, misinformation. Some of you would say fake news, not just in this country, but throughout the world. People very divided, all kinds of divisions, religious, political, generational, regional, the list goes on. And yet in moments like this, as another hurricane appears on the horizon, we hope that somehow we can pull it all together. Try to find a sense of unity, at least for a few days, maybe a few weeks, but at least for a few days. Try to get the different groups working together. And as Unitarian Universalists, we've been trying to do this for quite a while, but we stay with it. And all of you, especially the people who are present in this room at this moment, but all members of the congregation, you're part of this, well, experience, part of this story. History continues, and you're part of it. How do we get everything together in the right sort of way? That's what we celebrate in this congregation, not just on Sunday mornings, but throughout the week. Through our different events. As was mentioned a few minutes ago by Pat, this is, well, it's the wedding anniversary for Lynn and myself. We were married in Boston at King's Chapel, which is one of the oldest of the Unitarian Universalist churches in the United States. Our minister was Reverend Glenn Snowden, who was one of my mentors. Glenn Snowden. Now, we did something that was very Unitarian Universalist. We sat down and we wrote our own wedding service. Okay? We decided what the vows were going to be like and what the songs were going to be like. And there were songs included in our wedding service. We decided who was going to say what and when and how. Now, this is very unusual among religious organizations because in most religious traditions, there's a particular formula that has to be followed very closely, maybe modified a little bit, but typically the priest, the rabbi, the imam, whoever, tells you what it is you're supposed to say and when and how you're supposed to say it. But we're a little more creative than that, more innovative. So we wrote our own wedding service, and that's not unusual among Unitarian Universalists. Reverend Snowden said, this is quite high praise indeed. He said, "This is a good service. I like this. I think I'll keep this." We put it in his file. And then he asked Lynn and myself if we'd done any other writing. And I said, well, I hadn't done any religious writing anyway. We might try it again in the future. That was one of the reasons I got into the ministry. And since then, I have helped so many couples preparing for marriage. I lost track a long time ago. I tried to figure it out. I don't know. A couple of hundred anyway. Every marriage, every wedding ceremony is different. I'm not making that up, folks. They're all different. I've seen happy. I've seen sad. I've seen comical. I've seen everything. I've seen tragic, including one sermon or service in a hospital, which was essentially at the deathbed. There were only a few hours. But they decided to get married. I've seen all kinds of wedding services. And sometimes we get to do some counseling beforehand. And then there's all kinds of questions and all kinds of concerns that get referred to. And have you thought about this? And have you thought about that? And at some point in the conversation, I will frequently, not always, but will frequently ask the couple, what's your favorite charity? Do you have one? I'm going to reach for some Kleenex at this point. Thank you. Okay. By the way, you always need a box of this stuff. Weddings and funerals. And sometimes even the minister needs a Kleenex. Okay. Thank you. You have a favorite charity? A cause? You. And when I say you, I mean together as a couple that you support. Some people will speak up right away while they support higher education or public libraries or animal rights, or they're concerned about the homeless, or they may have some other great cause in mind. But other couples really haven't thought about that. What do they care about? Who do they care about? I say, well, you may want to think about that. And sometimes, well, maybe they do. That question frequently comes up again in life. It comes up with memorial services, where I'll meet with the family, and we'll talk about this and that, flower arrangements, music, all kinds of things. But the question will come up again. What did she believe in? What did she support? You know, when we get to the point in the order of service where it says, in lieu of flowers, please do what? Do you want to do anything particular? Was there a charity that she cared about? So the question comes up frequently, twice. Now, it used to be said that there were two books where you write your religious story, where you explain the meaning of your life. Two books. This goes back a few decades. Your checkbook and your calendar book. Because if you read those two books, you're going to find out what's really important in your life, and particularly if you read a couple of years. Nowadays, of course, things are electronic, but the message is still pretty much the same. Those are the two books where you're going to tell the world who you are, what was really important in your life, and as you read those pages, you may make some discoveries. We hope you keep that in mind, whatever good causes you may support. And I hope you do have some favorite causes. I hope this congregation is included on your list. And of course, I hope you're very generous, not just with financial donations, but what we ask especially is your time, that you become involved in this congregation, that you're helpful to others. Now, in many religious organizations, the eyes are always going forward. You're there and you're sort of watching me, and maybe you're watching Pat, trying to figure out what we're doing and what it is we want and such. But there are important moments when you need to look this way and see what your neighbors are doing. Look a little bit forward, maybe this way or that way. Try to begin to figure out where you might be needed, where you might be helpful. Maybe you're needed in this room. Maybe you're needed in a children's gathering. Maybe you're needed outside working on the lawn, in the garden. Trying to figure out where you fit into this mosaic. It's not just the finances. It's also a question of the personal time, the calendar, that really matters. Now, this organization, I have all kinds of favorite causes I support. I'm a great supporter of legal aid, for example, because there are times when you're going to need a good lawyer. And I love public libraries, But a congregation is different from a library, and it's different from a group like, let's say, the ACLU or something like that. Because those organizations, maybe they meet once or twice a year, maybe you can come to the meeting, maybe not. But this organization, this congregation, we're here every Sunday and throughout the week to provide support when and where it's needed. And it's needed in a lot of places. Now, we can talk about pastoral care, for example, just paying attention to each other, listening to each other. I was in a congregation years ago. I hope this question is asked in this congregation every now and then. What is it that you really want? What is it that you want from this congregation? You personally. All right. And one woman said, if I disappear for 5 weeks, I want somebody to notice, to pay attention. Where did she go? Well, heaven help us. I hope it's not 5 weeks. Maybe 5 days, 10 days. Think about Hurricane Milton. There are going to be people, we still are missing people from the last hurricane and the hurricane before that one. Some of the people disappeared in Debbie are still unaccounted for in a few places. If you're gone all of a sudden, it would be nice if people go and search and ask, where did she go? What happened? We can call that pastoral care, you can call it mutual aid, neighbors helping neighbors, Good Samaritan, whatever you want to call it. But it's one of the most important things that happens in this congregation. It's one of the reasons why many of the announcements become so important as we listen to each other. So I mentioned pastoral care. Support for each other is one of the important things that happens here. It doesn't happen in very many places in this nation nowadays. I want to mention the arts, because I don't think they receive enough attention in congregations. Well, they do and they don't. They need more attention, especially from the pulpit. You're all artists. You call yourselves artist activists or active artists. That's a term that gets used these days. Artist activists. You're involved with the live arts. For many people, this is the only place where they're going to hear live music all week, where they're going to sing. That used to happen all the time back in the days of Walt Whitman. I hear America sing. You don't hear very many people just spontaneously singing nowadays. It doesn't happen the way it used to, but it happens here. We celebrate music, choir. We celebrate the visual arts. We celebrate the culinary arts. That's enormously important. Cooking and baking. Sharing recipes. Being with each other. Passing recipes along one generation to the next. And this is something else that happens in congregations. Multi-generational activity. There's not a lot of multi-generational activity in today's world. We're much more age-segregated than perhaps Americans were 100 years ago or even 50 years ago. Young people, old people in their different spaces. But then in a congregation like this, the different age groups have opportunities to come together in the right sort of way. Wisdom is passed along. Young people and old people listen to each other. Doesn't happen in the ACLU. Maybe it should. Doesn't always happen down at the public library or at the YMCA even, or the YWCA. But in this place, the different age groups listen to each other. They try to be helpful. Social justice. Now, I've got to mention that. I'm going to mention social justice. This congregation is involved with other congregations in a great variety of activities. And one that is especially important, it's an organization called HOPE. HOPE. got established in Tampa in 1989. How many of you are involved in HOPE? Okay, all right, that's a good number. What does HOPE stand for? Okay, Hillsborough Organization for Progress and Equality. So, don't give up hope. Okay, you knew I was going to say that, right? Okay. It's one of the most important things that this congregation does. And again, we're somewhat unusual, although not unique. This involvement with people in other cultures, other faith traditions. People who may not always be in agreement with us on some matters, but we find ways to connect with each other and to provide assistance when it's needed, when it's appropriate. We talk about a community of communities. Okay, now we're not all going to sort of be melted together in one big melting pot so that we all come out looking and talking alike and thinking alike. We don't want to necessarily convert everybody to Unitarian Universalism because we don't really have enough space in the parking lot, do we? Okay, all right. So there are times when we appreciate diversity and celebrate diversity, but there are other moments when we come together, and hope is one of the ways in which we do it. And we support hope in this congregation. What else do we do that's worthy of your special support? We have Sunday worship services. So we come together, as we are now, to celebrate what is genuinely good, what's healthy, what's worthwhile, what is worthy of our worshipful attention. Now, when you go into some of the old Universalist churches, this is especially true in the South. It's true in other churches, too. Some of the historic African American churches. You'll notice there'll be a platform up front like this, and then there'll be 3 chairs. Yeah, we got 3 chairs. Now, the first chair is for any visiting dignitary there might be. So if we had a bishop, if the bishop came, the bishop would have a chair. Or if the national president came, then the national president would have a chair. And then the second chair is typically for the speaker of the day. It might be a minister if the congregation has a minister. But maybe it'd be somebody else. The third chair is the chair that is especially important, because that's the chair for the worship associate, or the song leader in many cases, the person who is coordinating the service. And of course, it's Pat Benedict. Right now, it's Pat Benedict. You've had people before you.
Oh, yes.
There may be other Pat Benedicts in the future. They may be upstairs with the young people. I don't know. But the tradition will continue. Finding a way to come together. And not just to speak, but to really experience what is holy, what is spiritual. And the day may come when you're doing that in a parking lot and you don't have electricity and you might not even have a building. But we hope we still have somebody like Pat. We hope we still have people who can bring a choir together. Maybe it'll be ad hoc. We hope we have people who can serve coffee and whatever else we have to share. This is what matters. It's not the minister. We don't have bishops. We don't worry about that. It's frequently the individuals who hold everything together. And you've got some very good people in this congregation who do that. And it matters not just for this congregation, but the whole community. Think about that. This is the harvest season, the autumn harvest season. We think about what we're gathering in, what we want to contribute to, what we want to support in the future. We think about what we're planting at this moment for future harvests. So I ask for your support for this congregation, and especially as we move towards another hurricane. Blessed be. Oh, one other thing I brought you. I got a bunch of these. This is Food Recovery Resource Guide for Hillsborough County. So there's a whole pile of these out in the lobby right now, or the foyer. And this is the sort of thing that congregations support. Food pantries, community kitchens, community meals. Religious groups have been doing food-related activities since prehistoric times. You know, it's in the Bible. Okay. And the tradition continues. So take a look at this book, too, if you have a few moments. Thank you.